should we do this? All right. Call to order a regular meeting of the Planning Commission for the Town of Superior. Can we have the roll call, please, Phyllis?
Chairperson Jim Sawtelle.
Here.
Vice Chairperson Robert Momartz. Commissioners Phyllis Harden here. Bob McCool.
Here.
Jerry Malia.
Here.
Jason Reese.
Here.
Lisa Ritchie.
Here.
Anthony Stewart. Stephen Whitty.
Here.
Planner Stephen Williams.
Here.
Attorney Dan Harvey.
Here.
All right, thanks, Phyllis. Next item is public comment on the consent agenda or non-agenda items. I don't see a lot of public here, so I think we're okay. Next item is election of a chairperson and vice chairperson. I'm happy to go ahead with this if you all like. In the past, I think last year we waited until we had a full commission to do it, but it's really up to you all. I think we can do it with a quorum. So, what are your pleasure? What's your pleasure?
Seems like we're often missing one person, so I don't know how long. It's fine either way.
I'm good with
Bob's our vice chair. With Bob being our vice chair, is it okay with him not here? Does he, I don't know what his...
I talked to Bob today, and I think I can relay, with his permission, kind of where he's at on everything. So
Okay.
I think
I'm
he'd
cool.
probably be okay if we went forward, if you all want to go forward. If I can just say a few words before I do, so my term on the commission is going to expire in June, and that will be not quite 6 years on the commission, and had the privilege and honor of being the chair for the past 3 years, and been very honored and flattered that you all would trust me with that position. But I think it's time for me to step aside and let somebody else step into the chair role. I don't plan to reapply when my term expires, so I won't be here beyond June, and it would be good, I think, to get some fresh blood, fresh ideas on the commission too, and I think any one of you would be wonderful in the position of chair. So with that said, I don't want to assume that anybody was going to nominate me, but I want you all to know that that I would respectfully pass the gavel to somebody else. So, and it's been a real honor. So thank you all for the privilege.
Thank you.
Jim, thank you for all your years of service. I had no idea you'd been on the board that long.
No, I'm growing a root here.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much.
So does anybody, well, I guess I'll just pass along my conversation with Bob. I talked to Bob Momartz earlier today, and he was aware that I was, planning to step down, given my term expiring. And I asked whether he had an interest in serving as the chair. He's been the vice chair now for at least 3 years, and I think the longest serving member of the commission. And he indicated that that's not something he really wants to do. He's also, his term is also expiring in June, and I think his present state of mind is that he'll probably not re-up at that point. So I think we probably will need both a new chair and a new vice chair.
Well, I guess with that being said, are we ready to, can we go ahead and nominate?
Yeah, if we have anybody who wants to make a nomination, go ahead.
I would like to nominate Commissioner Ritchie if she is interested in this position.
I really, really appreciate that. That means a lot that you all would consider that. Honestly, I think I do miss a fair number of meetings, and my work schedule is not likely to change anytime soon. So I don't know that I would be able to serve, I think, in the kind of a complete capacity from a chair perspective, from a leadership perspective. Ultimately, I would defer to you, but I don't feel like it's fair to the commission for me to serve in that role. But I really appreciate that. I would consider vice chair if you are so inclined. I think that would be probably more realistic with my schedule. I really appreciate it.
Well, then at this time, I would nominate Commissioner Ritchie for vice chair.
I just wanted to add, I support Commissioner Reese's selection of Commissioner Ritchie as chair or vice chair. If vice chair suits you better for, your work needs and things like that, I think that would be a great position for you. And along those lines, I'd actually like to nominate Commissioner McCool as chairman.
Okay, I'm sort of hoping for vice chair, but I can chair. I'm committed to the commission and hope to be able to be here for most of the meetings. But
Okay, so we have
thank you.
nomination and a second, or a nomination for chair and nomination for vice chair. Do we have a second?
Does anybody else want to throw their name?
Oh,
in?
yeah, is anybody
That's
else
probably
interested?
worth asking.
Okay.
No, thank you.
All right, second?
I will second Commissioner McCool.
Okay, all those in favor?
Wait a minute.
Oh, yeah.
So we have two motions, one for the vice chair. Let's do a second on the vice chair.
Oh,
for
okay,
Lisa.
second on the vice chair?
I'll second on the vice chair for.
Commissioner Whitty, okay. I was just gonna do a
Do it all.
party ticket here,
I think we
cow
can
calf
probably-
operation, so. Okay, so
2, 3,
we'll
4,
we'll go ahead and vote on,
7.
we'll go ahead and vote on chair first, right?
Oh, chair, okay.
All right, all those in favor? All right. Vice chair?
Okay.
All right,
Okay.
congratulations, folks.
All right.
Excellent.
It's great.
Mhm.
Does this mean that I can
I think
step
you
down?
get to turn it over.
No.
Excellent.
Now? What am I supposed to do up there?
I think you have to finish the meeting.
You're like,
All right, if you
I
want
got a
me to
little warm
finish
up?
it, I'll
Yeah, would you
finish
please?
it. Okay.
Wait
All right. Congratulations. That's
Thank you.
great. I'm real happy for that. Okay, next item is the consent agenda and approval of the minutes of two meetings. The first are the minutes of the November 7, 2017 meeting. Did anybody have any changes they wanted to make?
I didn't see any issues.
We have a motion to approve? Or did you?
I did not attend, so
Oh,
I
okay.
can't.
Motion to
I'll
approve?
move to approve.
Commissioner McCool, second.
Second.
Commissioner Malia, all those in favor? All right. Now, the minutes of the November 28, 2017 meeting. Did anybody have any changes?
No.
All right, can we have a motion to approve?
A motion to approve the
Commissioner Reese,
minutes.
second. Commissioner McCool, all those in favor? I had to abstain, I wasn't here.
Okay.
Okay, next item is discussion and recommendation of the annual PC work plan. I don't think we had anything in the packet on this. We putting this over to you, Stephen?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we discussed this kind of preliminarily, and then I think it was kind of intended to be discussed at the joint session a couple weeks ago with the town board. And the focus was obviously on the Northwest area plan. So this is still going to go back to the board for adoption, and typically it stays on the consent agenda. This is, just kind of a very preliminary start on this. This is the 2017 draft, and we can either start here or we could start with the Northwest area plan recommendation and then work our way back to it, however you want to do it. I know that there's been a request to eliminate item 4, which we never get to. I think, there's some fairly basic tweaks to this one. But, I think you guys can either take it as, the bulk of the work in 2018 is going to be the Northwest sub-area plan, or if you want to add anything to it, we can add something to it. But I imagine we'll whittle this down to 2, 3, 4 items rather than the 6 or 7 that are listed. I think 6 is just long. So
So you're saying we can either work off of this, or we can just,
We can just cut it and cut back as much as we want. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, the 88th Street was something that kind of got brought back up as I was listening through the minutes, kind of in preparation for the joint work session last month. And that's something that I think is kind of similar as the McCaslin improvements that have kind of been taken up by the Transportation Safety Committee. So I think it's still worth looking at if that's something that you guys want to look at and add to your plan. But if you don't, if you want to kind of kick the transportation issues over to the other committee, we can do both things. I mean, certainly you guys did work on transportation stuff last year, and I think had an influence on the Transportation Safety Committee. So I'm not trying to discourage you from that. You can take either role.
Okay.
I would agree. I think striking number 4 seems just really reasonable. It's probably not likely. And then can you help me out a little bit with now, I guess, the Transportation Safety Committee taking on more of the role? Maybe we could serve in like a kind of a review, like if they bring forth recommendations, the recommendation from the Transportation and Safety Committee could come through Planning Commission before it goes back to the board. I don't know. I'm just thinking about maybe possible ways to stay involved with transportation-related issues, but not kind of owning the transportation-related issues.
So I think by default, you're probably going to stay involved regardless, just based off of development applications that are in the queue.
Great.
But if you want to be more proactive in kind of analyzing that or trying to get some outreach from the public, I think you may hear regardless. So, I mean, I think you could certainly we could try to craft some work plan item on here that just, suggests that you will gather that information and you will, somehow filter it on to the Transportation and Safety Committee, everything you're hearing. Or we can also encourage those people that come to these meetings. I thought we might actually have a couple today to go to those Transportation Safety Committee meetings as well. But however you want to do it, I think we can do it. And you guys are, I mean, it's open to, it's open to whatever you guys feel like is important to look at. So I'm not here to influence it in any ways.
I'm feeling a little bit torn both ways, right? We spend a lot of time. Northwest Sudbury, I think, is obviously a highest priority, and I don't want to detract from that. I feel like we have resources this year. But I also see, like, we spent a fair amount of time on McCaslin, and I felt like all that work just was presented and then, pushed aside. So
You can leave it on there, too.
I think we should leave it on there.
okay.
The Northwest Superior attention that the Northwest Superior is going to be getting in the near future is sufficient, so we should keep Northwest Superior definitely on our work plan. The Transportation Safety Committee taking up a lot of the issues surrounding McCaslin, 88, things like that. I'm still a major advocate for McCaslin in particular, but all the streets and traffic and intersections around Superior, because of the number of people that are moving here, that topic needs to be addressed. And so we need to, maybe one of us can consistently attend some of the transportation safety meetings. Maybe they read our notes, don't they? They get our notes, transportation and safety?
I don't know, honestly.
They're board members, so.
I mean, they're available to them. I don't know whether or not
Is
they're
this-
looking
One's a
at
board
them.
member.
Isn't this committee all board members, or is
It's
it
all
now
board
an-
members.
It's true, they're all board members.
They're all board
So-
members.
Okay.
All right. So
They should be
So
getting
they
get our
get
notes.
them not in that capacity. but-
Yeah.
They get them as board members, you're correct, yeah.
Yeah,
So
okay.
They
So
should be
they'll
aware
still
of
read
that.
what we talk about. I think we should keep it, transportation and safety and McCaslin on our work plan.
Okay.
It's that important.
I agree.
I'm happy to kind of monitor 88th from a, commission, like, bring forth, if maybe we want to assign, like, one of you keep an eye on McCaslin, if there's an issue on
Yeah,
McCaslin
perfect.
with transportation and safety, maybe kind of check in or attend that meeting. I'm happy to do
Yep.
88th Street, and then bring it back, I think, maybe as needed. 88th is a little trickier. I know we've got a couple active applications on either side right now, so we can navigate through that with you, I guess, as far as kind of what's inbounds and what's out of bounds. So maybe,
Yeah.
I don't know.
And I think we didn't really get to 88th Street last year like we had hoped to. I think we were hopeful that we could maybe bring forward some proposals, not unlike what we did with McCaslin, but I think we just ran out of time.
I think we did run out of time, but I also think we have an opportunity with 88th, seeing development potentially on both sides, that we have the opportunity to, I think, shape that in probably a more effective way than maybe we did on McCaslin this year. And I don't know how much of a willing partner at this time we have in the city of Louisville, so I think some of the 88th Street options we were talking about are probably not viable anytime in the near future. So we can maybe monitor like that long term, and then, like I said, kind of assign it and bring it back.
So do we just want to strike the wayfinding piece and then leave everything else in place?
Yeah, strike wayfinding, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Are you planning any code amendments this year that you're working on behind the scenes, or no?
I wish. Yeah,
I know.
No. So, I mean, it might, come out of something, some other
Yeah,
Yeah,
make
product, something else, or the Northwest
Okay.
study, but nothing's planned now. Just
Jerry,
development review.
the McCaslin component, could you, I mean, I know Northwest Superior is going to impact at least this end of it, but can you keep this end of it as being the champion of that too? That, I think, so besides the issues on the
On the
other
south
end of town, the south
Yep.
end of town, we have, issues coming across the diverging diamond and, getting into town center. We just want to pay attention to all that.
Yeah, oh, definitely.
Cool.
Definitely.
Do you want to keep one?
I think that's critical. I think
think we should leave
yeah,
it.
I think that's pretty important. I'd like to knock that out early, actually.
Did we make any progress on that this past year?
No.
Yeah. I think we should leave it.
Okay, sorry I asked.
No, it's okay. It's a fair question.
It's a cynical pour.
Major capital improvement projects, are we anticipating any this year? Is that, not that we can't leave it on there, I'm just kind of curious if we're
I
going to
don't
have the
think,
opportunity
like, on the
to-
scale that we've had recently, but, so I haven't heard any, but I can double check with Alex. But that's one that you would want to have some input on, should it
Absolutely.
occur, so.
Okay.
Okay, well, if that's it, that's pretty easy. Is there any tweaking to the language that you guys feel is appropriate, or are we pretty good with what we have?
It's pretty good.
Okay.
I think it's good.
Yeah.
Do we need any kind of a motion to approve this? Or?
I think it's probably best, yeah.
All right.
So,
Unless anybody has any changes, could we have a motion to approve?
I will move to approve the 2018 Planning Commission work plan as amended and shown on the projector.
We have a second?
I'll second. Excuse me, a second.
Commissioner Reese, all those in favor? All right, motion's carried. Okay, so we have staff announcements and miscellaneous, but I'm wondering, is this where we talk about the?
no, this
Canyon
is where we
thing?
talk about I wouldn't think we're done with 6 yet. So part of the work plan is your recommendation on the Northwest Area Plan. So Martin and I basically just took what Bob had provided and formatted it into our standard kind of recommendation or memo format. So we can go through this. It should be quite similar to what we saw here. And if you want to go through it, I know we might be able to go through it side by side, but I'm pretty sure the language, I didn't change
Close,
any
that's
of the
right.
language.
Well, Commissioner Ritchie has to leave in about 15 minutes. So I want to make sure we get her input.
Okay.
If we do that in advance, that'd be great, and then have a conversation. And then, Stephen, you had made a comment about maybe increasing the community engagement component. So I agree with you on that. I think making that a little stronger, that language a little stronger, and maybe even separate. I started to separate it out, but then I think I closed the document and didn't save it.
Okay.
So, but I'd love to talk about that a little more too.
Okay.
So should we run through it from the staff?
Sure.
Cover memo
I mean, this is the one
version?
that'll get changed or whatever, so.
Yeah, I think that's fine.
Um,
Do you have
I have that
prepared,
up here.
do you have prepared comments that you
I
wanted
do
to
have a
bring
couple.
up?
I just was going to kind of scan through it. I mean, there's a typo for while I'm thinking about it. Non-conforming.
Where is it?
Oh, I just saw it. Of course, now I'm not going to see it. I think it said non-confirming.
Hmm.
And
And
then
then
it
just
wouldn't be
consistency and
underlined.
capitalization.
Yeah, this was definitely not checked for even for spelling. My spell check wasn't working either, so.
Yeah, so those are just kind of, I felt like we needed to provide some clarification on what we mean by the light industrial zoned areas between 4th and 5th Avenue. I know that the board expressed some concern when we met with them a couple weeks ago about mucking around with that zoning. So I feel like when we talk about zoning in here, we should clarify. And I guess I'd like to circle back on that one with the commission quickly to see maybe, are we on the same page with that? And where were your thoughts on this light industrial comment? I guess with what we would,
That's in the document?
yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
it's right here.
let me look at that.
Just want to
So-
provide clarification for them so they don't get hung up on
Yeah,
what we're presenting.
they got hung up on that word zoning. That was, the attorney got all up.
Well,
on
that settled down a bit. I think that settled down a
It
bit
did
in the
once we
dinner.
clarified it during dinner, but I know that like, who was it? Board member Ryan, indicated he wasn't interested in looking at
He
the light
was
industrial zoned areas.
he was under the impression that we were recommending zoning changes to which I don't think we are, but I think there are land use impacts that are also zoning changes. If we make changes to land use code that impact the zoning, which I think we're going to have to talk about because I think we have some issues, not so much, I mean, the issues are more around the size of the parcels and the way our land use code reads and the lack of flexibility of multifamily zoning when you're dealing with 3 lots, our multifamily zoning, and I think light industrial, the reality is I think it has multifamily by right? Doesn't light industrial have?
No,
No?
not industrial.
Okay.
No, I don't believe so.
Right, and so that should at least be discussed, because I think part of it was, what is the reality of light industrial going there, and is that an opportunity area, right?
So maybe we could refine this a little bit, because I do think you've captured like what our intent was with the zoning changes with your first bullet, which is possible, possible development or design standards, and maybe to clarify with something like, or possible code amendments related to development standards such
Well,
as setbacks.
and this is just address planning vision for the areas that have
Yep.
development opportunities. It's not about changing anything. It's like, we have these zoning areas,
I know,
and
I'm
we need
just-
to be thinking about,
Right.
from a
But
planning
I'm thinking,
perspective,
like,
yeah.
I'm just trying to get in front of where the board was concerned. So we can take it or leave it. I agree with
Sure.
the points. Maybe on the light industrial zoned areas,
I think, I'm
I don't
sorry
know.
to interrupt you,
Yeah,
Lisa,
no,
but-
go ahead.
I mean, I recall trustee Ryan's comments on that, but then we also heard from trustee Pennington, and I think trustee Dozal indicated that that rezoning might be an appropriate outcome as they go through this process. So I guess I came away from the meeting thinking that
Not as
they're
concerned.
willing to look at everything and, try to decide what makes the most sense.
yeah, I mean, even Marshall Road realignment or RTD, I mean, these are all big topics that we just need to, I mean, they may die during our discussion, they may go nuts during our discussion, I think the idea is that creating awareness that we have these zoning areas and reviewing our land use code to ensure that we can do what we want, that what we kind of intend as a town, and so.
I see what you're saying. I agree with,
it-
right, yep.
It's not about suggesting we rezone it. I mean,
Right.
I listened to this multifamily thing on the corner of 4th and William, and it was just crazy. They couldn't even present their concept because our setbacks and everything, they wanted us to change our land use code so they could do what they believed was the right thing. We couldn't even entertain it because we weren't going to do a variance for it, and we certainly weren't going to change our land use code on the fly during a presentation, right? But it created this issue where somebody's come in with wanting to do hopefully the right thing and a nice thing, but they couldn't, right? Our code didn't allow it. So whether that conversation goes into how do we accommodate smaller parcels in multifamily, or whether it goes, I don't know what the community is going to go. They may say, gee, can we get it? Can we do something about that zoning in general, or downzone it? But then that becomes conversations with the owners of the property, and whether we can afford to even pull off something like that, right? It's not something we can just do, you know.
No, that's really clear. That's really helpful. I understand where you're coming from now. I guess I was just a little fearful they might get hung up on that. But now that you've clarified it, I think we're fine.
Yeah, I don't think they will.
No, I think
maybe
you're good.
I
think you're good.
think we're.
Can I ask a quick question? What does it mean on the Fifth Avenue right-of-way? What does right-of-way imply?
Where would, let's see, multifamily zoned areas
Yeah,
between
I
4th
don't-
Avenue.
Right-of-way.
Oh, I don't know what that, yeah, I agree with that. That, between 4th Avenue and 5th Avenue.
because Fifth isn't built?
Oh, no. I mean, it wouldn't,
Right-of-way means like streets and alleys.
well, no, yeah, there's a 5th Avenue, the 5th Avenue, there is, because it's not 5th Avenue, it's
not
just a
built,
right-of-way. That's all it is right now.
Oh.
It's not Fifth
Okay.
Avenue, it's the 5th Avenue it's, and I don't know if that's the right word, but.
No.
No, it's platted
It-
as a right of way. It
it-
just isn't developed. It's
It's a
undeveloped.
street.
It's
What is it, an
undeveloped, but
avenue?
it's not a street, right?
Yeah.
It's a street. Fifth Avenue is a street. It's
Not
platted as
south
a
of
street.
Coal Creek Drive.
Where?
Like
Oh,
s-
you're right. Over in the marketplace, it's
Yeah.
a street.
So it's platted between these, like the Kuffner parcels and Coal Creek Crossing. It's just not developed.
So is that
Fifth
right of way
Avenue.
or is that a street?
That's a street.
My intent was really to talk
Check it
about
out.
that area.
That's what I
Whether or
want.
not it's a street versus an avenue?
Well,
Oh, Fifth Street.
No,
Oh,
it's
Fifth
No, it's
Street. Is
Fifth
that what you're
Avenue.
saying? No, she's
no.
talking about right of
No,
way
I'm
versus a
talking about
street.
it- Right.
Yeah.
The right of way to
And I
me.
think-
So
It's
I
pull-
think it is a Fifth
We could
Avenue.
just change it to as platted instead of
Or
right
something.
away.
Fourth
Or
Avenue,
check
yeah,
on it
between
and
4th
see if
Avenue and
that's
5th
the right
Avenue.
word. That's all I'm asking.
And it's in both.
It's never been vacated. It's still platted right away.
Right. It's not been vacated. It's still a street or avenue, whatever. Up to Coal Creek Drive, and then you have the park, and then you have Fifth Street on the other side of Sycamore, all the way up to Marshall. So
Maybe undeveloped right away.
Okay.
maybe.
Or just as platted.
As
Either way.
platted,
as
either way,
platted.
yeah.
Yeah, and I think they are avenues. It's
Yeah,
3rd
they are
Avenue,
avenues,
4th
yeah.
Avenue, yeah,
It
yeah.
is
or-
avenue.
Yeah. Avenue's right, but, and you've got it in both the 2nd and 3rd bullet point.
Yeah. Okay, thank
Yeah,
you.
Perfect. Cool.
Any other comments?
I'd love to get into a little bit with regards to the recommendation. Stephen made a comment, and I think it's important that we try to create a pretty clear focus, or make it stand out a little stronger, the importance of and the process of the community, not even so much process, more the importance of the community engagement. What's that, a little bit about what's that going to look like. I had even thought maybe we break it out into a separate heading under the recommendations. We have eight bullet points, and maybe one of those bullet points is community engagement with some little stronger language in there. I don't know if you thought about this anymore, Stephen, but.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I didn't get to look too closely at this final agreement, but a lot of what what those 8 points at the end kind of were massaged into the scope of services. And we had one that had.
Or
kind
maybe
of
strengthen the language in number 4. Maybe we can just, well, your number, is this the recommendation?
No, this is the other one. This is the scope.
Oh,
So
gotcha.
I thought that there was still, maybe it got changed out, but there was some language in here on, here's the deliverables. Community agent Saturday talent to guide the process, and then there was something on education elsewhere. But if you have suggested language to your
I
document.
think when
we
you read
can-
that scope, it's more.
Go ahead. You may
the
go back.
Contract one.
Yeah.
I like the detail you've got in there.
And I know the board was also concerned about making sure that our recommendation and the language in our recommendation flowed with the recommendation in the
And
or in the
scope of services more,
services,
yeah.
And to be
Did you have
honest,
a
I've not
suggestion?
compared those.
Sorry, for
so-
4?
You know, what one thought was just make number 4 community engagement process and put some bullets under it to make it stand, you know, just maybe to make it stand out a little bit more. That I don't even know that the language needs to change all that much, but
Expand the community engagement process.
is it community?
Bullet.
Yeah, like community engagement and education with some bullets under it, maybe just to make it a little beefier than just a line item. So maybe make number 4 community engagement and education.
Community engagement.
Yeah, community engagement.
Oh,
and,
sorry.
Yeah, community engagement and education. Yeah. And what's it? Can we look at the scope of services around that? Did that get elaborated on at all in the scope?
I don't know that it got elaborated on too much. It was, I mean, part of it was to be succinct, so I think it was just summarized a little bit differently. But the it got broken in right here, the second phase.
Looks like the first page, the second page is contractors self-organized community meetings to present vision goals and community education
So maybe the bullets are, conduct community meetings, provide education opportunities, seek input, just put a couple of the steps as bullet items just so it's really just so it stands out a little more clear. Because that's, just a little more visual. It's our intent, but it needs to kind of stand out. I think that's a huge part of this whole process, so.
So
And I think the first step, I think the first bullet, education is going to be, I know in the original presentation she did in November, there was talk of providing like alternate scenarios and, I know let me talk for a minute because a couple things came up over the last couple weeks in talking to folks. So there's some interest in, and I actually like this approach. So let's see if you guys do as well. But if we throw out, hey, what do you want to do? We're going to get 75 different answers back, right? If we develop scenarios based on what we know are realistic possibilities of what could happen in this area to create discussion topics, we can better, I don't want to say guide the conversation as much, but limit it to something that's digestible, right? Because if we just open it up to whatever anybody thinks and present it that way, it's going to become cumbersome and hard to follow. If we, as citizens who live here, can identify based on our knowledge and understanding, and also maybe get feedback from the board and from staff about what are the scenarios that are realistic, right?
Yeah, it looks like they're doing that in 2A.
Yeah, so part
In
of
the
it,
scope of services?
I think
Yeah,
you're,
a scenario analysis to explore community preferences regarding possible futures.
Yeah,
So like they've got that captured in the scope. I don't know that our memo is that
does, yeah,
explicit,
that's what,
but the
yeah, I don't know if I
scope
needed
is.
that explicit, but yeah, that's something, I think the first item under our community engagement is probably that, which is, where was it? Strategies, develop strategies. It is probably going to be planning commission, staff, and board work to develop strategies and alternate scenarios for a Northwest area vision, right? Something that we can prepare to present to the community for discussion. Yeah.
I think you're good.
Is that good? Yeah.
I think it's-
All right.
so which part, is it just C, or is it a
Oh,
little bit of both that you want to pull to?
Some of those are in there as separate line items, I think. I think it's recommended strategies. That's a past tense. That's a past verb. Recommended. Is this really to develop and recommend strategies for discussion? Is that? I mean, from our perspective, I mean, we're not planning to recommend strategies. We're planning to discuss, develop, and well, not even implement yet. This first part, we just want to discuss and develop strategies for discussion, right? That or alternate scenarios, alternative scenarios and strategies for discussion. Things. The idea is things that could happen with the way things are today. What are the possibilities that can happen under our existing code, so that we can both educate and begin to get people to start thinking about, is that what they
Right,
want?
and I think
right?
that, I mean, I guess just to take a step back, so I think that this has been kind of organized, and it was a lot of Martin's work or legwork on this, but the way that, it's been organized is for, and I think this is to your point earlier, Bob, that without going in like completely open-ended, you're going to have 1,000 different answers to, or 1,000 different ideas, So the idea is like this first phase, you kind of refine that vision. So maybe defined is not the word we want, but kind of a refined vision, goals, and sense of priorities based on the feedback that we've received so far, and then some potential more like third-party work by the contractor to get some better like information on current market conditions and certain things, and that all of these things kind of happen before you go back for the community engagement piece.
Right.
So you have a little bit more information. You've done some outreach. Done some, I guess, the planning commission gets educated.
Yeah, we've done legwork to figure out, to pull all this together.
And then we go
right?
back with a little bit more of a defined vision to get the feedback during the second phase. And then the third phase also incorporates additional community meetings. So this is kind of like the refinement piece of what we've learned, and then we're gathering additional information that will come from the contractor. And that's the other thing to kind of keep in mind, like with the scope of services, this is all the contractor's duty. So part of the reason that it's written the way it is, and it's not going to be consistent verbiage-wise or tense-wise, is that this is just legalese for kind of clarifying what the contractor has to deliver.
I didn't.
Just
Yeah.
for context, I mean, this is an exhibit to.
Dan, can you turn on your mic, please?
Oh, sorry. Just for context, I mean, this is an exhibit to an agreement between the town and the contractor. So this kind of lays out, and if you actually look at the first page of the contract, it actually addresses scope of services and then references this exhibit. So in other words, this is basically kind of gives an overview of what the contractor will be providing to the town. Just to kind of give you some kind of background.
Yeah, and I wasn't thinking about changing the scope of services. I wanted to get our memo
Right.
lined up with how we were thinking, and then just make sure that the scope of services covers it. I agree, it doesn't have to follow it, but I wanted to try to get some language out of this to help.
One point that's just confusing to me, I think I've got it now, but we jump in 2 and 3, say second phase, third phase, but 1 never says that's first phase.
Yeah.
And again, I think that's what we're saying, but it just starts at second phase.
Okay.
So. And I think recommended, as I'm reading this now a little closer, recommended strategies seems to refer to in line 1 where we say develop recommendations and implementation strategies. And I think isn't C about those recommendations and implementation strategies that we're talking about in
Correct, yeah.
C?
Yeah.
So it is recommended, I think, is the right tense.
You're right. Now that as you say that, I think you're right.
Yep.
And like I said, I was less concerned about changing this and more
Okay.
concerned
No, I
about
just
getting
wanted
our,
to give you the context
our
of
recommendation.
the phases as being a little bit, I think that's new to the scope. That's not
Yeah.
necessarily reflected in, I think it's kind of holistic as you presented it. And I don't think they have to match.
Agreed.
But that's how this one's been done, and that's why
Yeah.
this exercise may be a little convoluted. But I think it's helpful, though, to kind of
Yeah.
align them as much as we can.
I've got one other, just a little nit, but Sandy beat on it over and over on the meeting, was in line 1 there, we say at the end, to address planning goals for the Northwest Area Superior, but we don't ever talk about goals in here. we don't ever use the word goals, and she just kept on saying, what's your goals? What are your goals? And we say it there, but we don't say it in your letter, and I think it's just a nuance of it, but we don't call the summary background. Like, I look at the first 3 bullet points you have in yours, those are the goal. That's what we're trying to do, I think. Those are the goals of our process. And so again, I'm just going back and listening to what Sandy. So to me, those are the 3. Is that correct? Are those our 3 goals?
Well, I was, let's see, so my recommendation in number 2 says develop criteria to assist in the prioritization of goals, such as legal issues, feasibility, estimated cost, et cetera. But you're right, I didn't mention the actual development of goals. And set goals. That was in step 1 of our recommendation.
Yeah.
Develop a vision and set goals.
Go ahead, sorry.
Is that what you're?
Yeah, I look at those first 3 things, and to me, that's what, that first, you captured the thing that they hit on in the first one, ensure existing communities within the Northwest Planning area be safe and livable place for all Superior residents. They made that really clear in the meeting that was, to me, the first goal. And I think you captured those first 3 things, and they said, be specific about what you want to do. And in number 3, I think you're really specific. Here's the things we want to address. So I think you laid out nicely what.
But I think the difference is that, and yeah, it took me a minute to catch up here, but the difference is that we've got background, things that the Planning Commission talked about and went over last year in a variety of meetings, and we brought in Clarion, and they did a community engagement process, and some things did come out of that. But the point of this next step is to do a thorough engagement, and to me that means goal definitions happen in this process. We're not assuming that what we've talked about in the last year are absolutely the goals, because we haven't really engaged the community at that level, and I'd like the community to have the opportunity to set those goals, right? And do I agree with you that it's very likely that we ensure the existing communities are safe and livable. That's probably a reasonable goal that'll come out, but we haven't actually established that yet, because I think the community engagement process, the early part of this process we're about to go into, needs to establish those goals, and we should help guide it with our thinking, but we haven't done it yet. Does that
It's
make
funny
sense?
because it's almost like goals within goals. So our goal as a planning commission is to establish all of this stuff, but within that, there's going to be
Goal
a
setting.
result, which is goal setting
Right.
for the process.
Yeah.
So I see where
It's-
you're coming from as far as our, what we're stating. We're trying to state what our overall goals are, but within that, there's going to be goal setting for something.
Yeah, and maybe that's where some of the confusion with the town board is too, because I'm not comfortable telling them what our goals are, because then I'm walking into an engagement process with the community to telling them what we think the goals are, and that's not what I think this is all about. I think we need to work with the community, businesses, and residents to figure out what they think is important and what they think is most important, and work together to prioritize that. And so how we lay that out so the board understands that is
It's
pretty
the
key,
same
I
kind of
think.
issue that I think it's just discussing it in a different fashion that we just discussed, that you can't go into a public engagement process with no parameters. So
Agreed.
Right. So and I think to Commissioner Whitty's point, I think that was part of the reason that there was some confusion, and I think that the board's been clear, like both kind of with staff, and I think, towards this end, about this objective that they want to see things simplified and as digestible as they can be. And I think that hopefully, but at the same time, like the term zoning, was a hot button. And I don't know that goals couldn't. I understand your point too, Commissioner McCool, that including goals or objectives or something like that here, before we get through the process is a careful dance, I guess, or a careful balance that we want to.
Yeah.
It might be that our intent is to, and we list, and then during.
Can you
Or
bring up number
discuss
one, my
what-
number one
yeah.
recommendation under the recommendation to actions? And let's just, that's, paragraph was designed to set the stage, I think, that we would work together with Clarion and staff and based on, at a high level, look at the concerns and the issues that have already been identified, right? Create a strategy to engage the community in the most effective manner to develop a vision and set goals. So, and I'm happy to wordsmith this, but my thinking there was, we've got all this information. We probably have a really good idea of what these are going to be, but I don't believe that we've gotten all the feedback we need. But we, you know, let's work together at Planning Commission, which will be public meetings, so people can come in on that too. But Planning Commission staff and board and just try to identify a strategic way to engage the community and start to talk about what the goals and priorities ought to be without making it a Pandora's box, right, and opening up everything that. But I do want to make sure that captures that.
So are you okay with the language up here, or do you want to change something to make these, I mean, I think.
Well, the background is just I think the background's
Okay.
fine. And this is a little confusing in this document too. I'd appreciate some feedback there because they did ask for some background and, right, so this first section isn't about what we're suggesting. It's the background of what has happened. Right, and even when I look at this document, I get myself confused about.
I thought you did a really good job of summarizing out of that meeting.
Yes.
Yeah, because I went through my notes and went back. I thought you captured. The only thing that was confusing to me is I look at those first three and I think, like, Sandy's thing was goal, goal, goal. And so what is our goal of this next phase? And because what you laid out in the recommended actions are our actions. But what's our what is our goal?
So I just had an idea, and I don't know whether or not this is, it's just an
Our
idea.
goal, not the final goals.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, so you could,
Not the
you
final
could,
goals. Yeah,
right.
exactly.
you could, yeah, I mean, so deliverables was another term that they used
Yes.
at
They
that
did.
meeting.
Yep.
So you could try to rephrase this to kind of, you know, with the goal of achieving the following something, you know, deliverables or, you know, I mean, I think the way that you've written these, I don't know that anyone's going to really argue with, you know, ensuring that the existing community within is safe and livable, or that, I mean, these are things that I think should guide the process.
I will say 2 board members really like this. That's all I've talked to, and one of them is one we were concerned about.
Yep.
But and think this is generally okay, but I didn't talk to everybody, and there was just too many to.
It's almost like those first three are almost our guiding principles. If you don't want to call them goal, it's
Yeah.
kind of our guiding principles is what those, I look at those and say, that's how we're going to do this, is by those first, and I think you laid it out, you nailed it, I think, so.
And is there a paragraph? I mean, maybe do we try to articulate the goal of this process in a paragraph? Would that be?
I like what you
I think
have.
everything-
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I agree with Commissioner Whitty. This is perfect. I don't think we need to add another paragraph to explain what we've just
Okay.
stated.
So then the only piece we were maybe thinking about expanding on was number 4 in the recommended process, and whether we just make that make sure we don't lose the work with the community to provide further education, but it should be,
I put that first.
yeah,
rather
continue
than,
community education, seek input on the opportunity area, conduct community meetings to present the draft vision and goals. I wouldn't mind the exploration. Could we just continue community education? Can we make it just 3 bullet points just for visual, right? 3 odd numbers are best. So continue community education, period. And then seek input on the opportunity area scenarios and, yes, on the opportunity area scenario. That's, something, seek input on, then the word that Clarion was using was alternate scenarios. Alternative scenarios or alternate scenarios. And I might leave key choices out. I don't know if we'll have those or not, but we don't really talk about the development of opportunity areas. Scenarios also created an engaged community and division set goals, right? Such English feasibility, market conditions, community engagement. How about how about continue community education and maybe elaborate a little more on that first bullet? We'll come back to that second one. Continue community education on potential development scenarios or potential
Just
development
development potential? Or
Yeah.
just development
Yeah,
potential?
Yeah.
development potential, yeah.
And I might even add and market, and I don't know if we want to talk about market analysis and conditions, because I think we want to educate people on what the market analysis says, right? If we do,
Right, and actually, I mean, so I think that depending on where you're looking, I think you want continuing community education on development potential and constraints.
sure.
So I think if
yes.
you were to look at the marketplace, you would find that there's constraints,
constraints, right.
that restrict it.
I
So
like it. Yep.
Okay.
Go ahead. Yeah, on development potential. Yeah. I think you need the word "on" after education. Continue community education on development potential and constraints. Yeah,
Sorry.
that's all right. And
Isn't, I hate to blow this up, but I'm just,
Go
I'm
for
gonna
it.
say this and then. But one looks like, here's what we're gonna do. 2, 3, and 4 address what's in 1. 5 is prioritizing what comes out of 1. 6 is then I mean, it seems like 2, 3, and 4 are what we should do to address what you have in 1.
And one.
So maybe
they're
those are
more-
sub-bullet- those are
they're-
bullets under
well,
one,
that-
maybe,
That's
or-
how it reads, because then we prioritize them, just like they told us, hey, don't come back without prioritizing
And then
your
sub-bullets.
findings. And then I think it's identify the requirements. So I think the rest are okay as steps, so that seems to make more sense to me, but.
that makes sense because yes, we're looking to get together as staff, planning commission, and Clarion to do this. Here are those things that we expect will come out of that. We'll develop some criteria. We'll evaluate the market conditions. We'll engage the community. Or is the community engagement its own step? Is that
Could be.
that I think community engagement might be step number 2.
That kind of aligns with the phase 2 that was identified in the scope too.
The way it is now, or putting it as number 2.
Putting it as number 2. I
Yeah,
mean,
let's put it back
yeah,
as number 2
okay.
and see. Or no, it should just pull it out. If you just backspace it all the way to the evaluate line and press enter, it'll
what did
shift
I
tab
do
it back.
now?
Now you're done, now you're done.
Ah,
If I just backspace it?
Yeah, one
yeah,
more.
backspace one
more.
more,
And then hit
and
it.
press enter,
No, enter.
and now hit shift tab.
I'm learning something new.
There you
Oh,
go.
Look at
that.
And then you can highlight the
New
next 3 and
skill
do a
set
shift
for you on
tab.
your resume
Yeah.
there.
Shift tab. Say what, Bob? I'm sorry.
Take the next 3 bullets and shift tab those back
Okay.
a notch, or
You can
one.
do them all at once.
Yeah,
No, I
or one
can't.
at a time.
One
Yeah,
at
you
a
can do
time.
one at a time, or you can highlight them.
How about 2
There
at
you go.
once?
There you
Do
go.
it at a time.
Let's- I'm just learning this stuff.
Sorry, my IT is coming out.
One more time, and it's ingrained in your memory, you're not gonna forget it.
Should have done them individually. You're right. Yeah.
Does that
Yes.
feel more accurate? Okay. And then, the community engagement would continue community education on development potential and constraints. I wouldn't mind something about the market conditions. I really think that the community needs to be educated on what we find out about the market, right? Because that's going to help guide the conversation around, let's not do X because the market conditions say that's stupid, or yeah, let's go ahead and do X because the market's saying this would be awesome for you to do, right? And getting the community up to speed on that.
You
would
you
be-
have
You
that
got that,
there,
yeah.
right there.
Well, that's for us though, but in the community engagement, we
Oh,
need to,
I see
you know
what
what I
you're
mean?
saying.
It should follow in with, and maybe it's continue community education on development potential, constraints, and market opportunity, or something like that. That's just one line or something.
Sure.
Yeah. The key choices has me thrown. Do you know what? Can you help me understand what that? I don't know whether we leave it in or I don't know what it means. I don't mind leaving it in, but I don't know. Seeking an opportunity areas. Conduct community meetings, present the draft vision, final goals. Okay, cool.
Anything else we want to look at through here, or we feel pretty good with?
Do you feel that lines up good enough with the?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we made any changes, and it was lining up. I mean, significant changes. I think this is all clarification
pretty well with
changes. So
clarity.
yeah, I think it lines up all right, and maybe even better with
And Darcy's seen all this and feels comfortable with the.
Darcy's seen it all.
Feels
Yes,
comfortable with it. Okay.
and
it-
she'll be there at the meeting next week too. But as I think directed by the board, somebody from Planning Commission will be there to present this. And
Yep.
Martin clarified earlier that this will be on the consent agenda. So when there's a public opportunity to speak to the consent agenda, you can either dive into this at a deeper level or just kind of clarify that you're here to answer any questions that they have on it. But I think they feel like, I mean, they may feel like that the discussion's been had already, so.
Okay. Will the presentation be a separate agenda item before consent? Is that the idea?
I'll have to follow up on that. I'm not sure that it's teed up. I mean, if it's on consent, there's usually not a presentation, so.
I
are
think
you
they want
aware
a
of how
presentation. I'm pretty sure they want a presentation. The
Under,
board does.
under presentations is going to be the chamber, and then a presentation on the Northwest.
Okay.
Okay, perfect.
And
Okay.
then under consent is Clarion's agreement.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
And the work plan,
got it.
PC work plan, is on consent.
Okay.
Oh, those two items are on consent.
Mhm.
Okay, good.
Okay.
So there will be a.
So this is a presentation of what we're recommending in our document, there, and therefore if there are any questions, if they pull the Clarion, if they happen to pull the Clarion
Right.
item, it should, and start to compare it, it should match up. I mean, I think
Correct.
that's what the key
Yeah.
is, because they may or may not look at it closely ahead of time, so. And Martin mentioned something, I mean, I don't know if we want to do a PowerPoint and hit some bullet items on this, or do you have any thoughts on that? Martin had mentioned an early email, and then I think it came up again in another email, wasn't as important, but what, should we?
I guess I don't know. My experience, I guess it could go either way. So I mean, if they don't have a lot of questions on it, you may just want to keep it simple and assume that there aren't any, like everything's been resolved, rather than run the risk of raising new questions or whatever. I think that, I mean, the conversation that we had last month, it was just clarifying a lot of things, and I think that it's hard for us because we've been intimately involved in this, so I think everything makes sense to us, and I don't know that we caught them up with all the steps that we went through. And I think Commissioner Reese's point that it wasn't just the data that came out of the survey, it was the actual experience and the conversations that we had afterwards, and the like firsthand knowledge that they were actually, I mean, like the engagement process was educational, that we learned from people that maybe not even like turned up in the actual survey responses, because they had I recall too, like a few people saying, "Oh, I answered it that way, but I didn't really understand the question, and now that it's explained, I feel like maybe that's not my answer," But it was just really like, and that's part of it too, is that I think the momentum that these people are really interested in this. It's not just like that we had 30 people from original town answered this question this way, or so that's what I think that we didn't necessarily convey like in our presentation either. So it's tricky, but I'm going off on a tangent here. I apologize. But
Well, my only concern is
I
they
think it
have
would be
so much-
succinct
they
if
have
you want to
so
do
much
it.
to
Right,
read when they
right.
get their packets.
Yep.
Will they have read this, or are they going to be expecting to be able to digest? I mean, one of the benefits of a presentation is giving them the time to digest the information, and they might even sit here and read it while you're. I mean, not that we ever do that when we're getting a presentation, right? But they're reading it for the first
Because
time,
you're listening to me,
right? Or you're
right?
reading a part of it for the first time. You have an opportunity to process the information, but then I can see what you say. That could end up raising.
I guess if I did it, I
More
would just be
questions.
succinct, and maybe you kind of go through those, if you go to the scope and kind of look at the phases that that have been outlined, that this is what, and I think that was the other thing that kind of got lost, was that they wanted to know what the deliverables were, and we're more understanding of the fact that we still have this process, like this big process to go through. We were just
Yeah.
scratching the surface on the community engagement. So
I'll tell you what, if I have time and I can put together some blank slides and send them over to you, you can put them on
Sure.
town-
yeah.
the town design slides, right? And
Yeah.
And if I don't, then I'll just wing it right off of this. And
I think
I
a
don't
couple
know if I'll
slides
have
to
to do it
talk to
myself.
or whatever wouldn't hurt, you know, but.
Yeah, and I agree, some talking points that maybe just capture, you know, maybe there's 4 or 5 slides with a, you know, with a list of the
Right.
recommendations.
I mean, this isn't that long either. You could highlight a few options or a few pieces in this that you want to get to and kind of skip over the fact that, you know, the first 2 steps or whatever, just get into, I think all you really need to talk about is the recommended actions. And that's
Yeah,
one
and I mean,
sheet,
and I could
so-
have a, you know, a background
Yeah.
slide and just talk, not really have all these details on there, but
Right.
just, here, I'm gonna tell you the background and here's what the engagement process looked like, because that'll answer, Trustee Ryan's questions about the survey. And by the way, are these numbers right, or do we have bigger numbers for, under the community
Those
engagement
numbers
process?
are
That's what was
the
in her
numbers that
early
you had were right.
presentation? Are they right?
Yeah, and I
Okay.
responded, I think, in.
You may have, yeah.
This document, maybe. That,
Oh, did you? Okay, okay.
So, yeah, we had 458
58 and
participants.
3,
And then the
okay.
way that the 300 was written was that, and an average of 300 respondents per question. So even though we didn't get 488 or 458 responses to every question, we had 458
Oh, okay.
individual.
Oh, did you change it to average? Oh, it says,
That's the way she wrote it.
okay,
yeah.
can you
So-
change it in the,
Yeah, I changed it to respondents per question or whatever in here. So that was the only change I made. And then it was just technical kind of edits, which I obviously didn't get all of them.
oh,
But,
that?
Did it
hang on,
not
maybe I
come
had
through in
wrong
the
doc-
next
Well,
one?
yeah, would you look at the one that we've been looking at?
Sure.
You may have. I've got so many documents going here. I'm
Yeah,
not
it's
sure which
458.
one I'm
Yeah.
looking at, so.
Right there.
So
Yeah,
it's
that, an
worded a little
average of,
differently,
yeah,
but
an
the
average of,
approximately,
that
yeah.
one. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That's
So,
458 total participants and an average of
you want to write that differently?
whatever your wording
Okay.
was. I think it was different than this, just, yeah. Yeah, okay, cool. All right, so I'm a maybe for a PowerPoint presentation, call it like that. Okay. I am making an assumption you want me to get up and do this, Jim, but.
I'm going to be in Maui, so.
Okay, guess I'll have to.
In March
conference
12th,
in?
Yeah, I don't think I can be much help.
Part of the chair's responsibilities.
Yeah, that's right, that's right. Oh, that's right, I'll be chair then. Oh, Lord. All right, I'm good.
Okay. You guys want to, I don't know, do we need to make a motion on this as well? It's just going to be in your packet tomorrow, and it's your memo. Okay, I think we're good.
We don't need to take action on this.
Do you want to look at, do you feel like they need to take action on this? Or adopting it as
So this is
changes
going to
or
be
whatever?
included with the packet itself?
It will be, yeah.
And this would be your.
I don't know what number it is. Is
Information
it?
for the meeting.
Yeah.
I mean, you certainly can, if.
Clarion is number.
I mean, it's essentially a recommendation.
Oops. Doesn't sound like it's necessary, but if you guys want to make a motion on this, we can to adopt it as amended, but
If
I
we
think that
don't
was the
have
point
to,
of our
I
work
wouldn't do it.
session,
I don't
really,
think we
so,
should do it.
okay.
We're all good with
Okay.
Clarion, that seemed all good, okay.
And then, do you guys need to look at the scope anymore, or the agreement? Or are we good with that as well?
And just pop over to it real quick, I think we're good. Oh, there we go. Okay. Did we want to put something about the first phase? I agree, there was.
I got a note
Steve,
to
I
ask
think you were
about it.
saying the second.
See if we
Yeah,
can get
okay.
that language inserted
That's
for,
cool, okay.
number
Right.
one.
Perfect.
Here, it gets on. think it's already on track changes, so we'll see.
That's fine.
Or it's not allowing me to edit it, one of the two. I am prohibited, so I'll check with Martin tomorrow.
Okay.
And this does break it down, so that first
Okay.
section doesn't, but the contractor deliverables does have first phase, second phase, and third phase.
Okay. Cool. Okay.
Okay, we good?
Yep.
Okay, I think that finishes up item number 6, right? So, item 7, staff announcements.
We will have a meeting on the 20th to discuss a proposal within the town center for electric vehicle sales and service station within planning area 1. So that'll go out to you guys a week from Friday. So,
Okay.
and then I don't know whether or not you had any questions for me, or if you want to talk in general about some of the emails that have kind of come in. One of the emails was just regarding the project status of the Zaharias final development plan rezone, and I think there's a plat associated with it too, but I wouldn't know because I haven't had a chance to look at it yet.
Are you
So-
addressing the question that came in from the?
Yeah.
Yeah, I
From the resident.
I didn't get that. Did you all get that email?
The email?
From the resident about the Zaharias property? I don't know, for some reason it didn't come to me.
Okay.
It came to me when you forwarded.
When I forwarded, okay.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So in general, when
Yep.
the planning commission gets an email like that, I mean, I'm happy to help with the substance, especially if it's the status of an application, but it's,
Sure.
you know, for planning commission to respond to or whatever. And in this case, I think we have the commercial development application that's currently under review, and we'll go to the PC in a few weeks, and then 5 like full-fledged subdivision applications with you know, a plat and sometimes a rezoning, as well as the final development plan, vertical development component to it. So, and just for, I guess, your knowledge, sometimes these things take, you know, months of back and forth with staff and the applicant, and sometimes it's, you know, sometimes it's a couple of months and sometimes it's several months. So, but until we get through, you know, like, we're juggling a number of applications. This one we haven't, I haven't assigned for the others. I mean, we're loaded with
Right.
3 or 4 right now without getting to that one that came in January. So
Okay.
we get to them as much as we can, but we're not a huge staff, unfortunately. So.
All right.
So there's no update, and I think that the community knows that it's been submitted, and so they're just want to be sure that they're aware when it comes to CU, and it will be noticed, just like everything else. So.
All right. All right. Thanks,
Do
Stephen.
you know what the earth movers were over here on this? Well, I don't know if it was on this side of the creek, but right on the other side of the creek, but on this side of the drainage ditch, or there are a bunch of earth movers going on over there.
Yeah, they're moving dirt from. I think it's been. I don't know what block that is. If it's block. So they're moving, you know, dirt that was stockpiled on in the core of the town center.
Oh,
and
that
they're
big
moving
pile.
it over to the park parcel.
Oh,
Because
okay.
there's going to be dirt that's needed for the grading of the park, and then there's also been kind of initial grading and clearing of the, you know, the noxious weeds or the trees that won't be retained. So most of that area is going to get cleared,
Okay.
as Commissioner Sawtell noticed and pointed out earlier.
Yeah.
And then it'll be revegetated with according to landscape plan was approved for the park parcel.
Okay.
So.
As far as you know, are they going to start work on the park parcel pretty soon?
They're doing, I mean, so they got to get through the federal permitting portion of it, but they're allowed to do the initial kind of grade work and I think a lot of it's just stockpiling. So they're clearing out the stuff that will go away and then stockpiling the dirt, kind of getting ready. I don't know exactly where and when they can actually start getting in there and changing the grades and doing all that stuff.
Okay.
But
Do they need all that? Is that dirt all going to get dispersed around town center, or some of that for Rogers Farm, or?
I think it's like split. I think that it's the developer's dirt, so some of it is coming because we need it, and haven't earmarked it. But I think that some of it is going to Rogers Farm, or would go to Rogers Farm, in order to get that, because there's a
Get
great
that up,
difference
yeah.
there.
Well, yeah, the
So,
street is,
yeah.
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 Just big trucks going around the roundabout.
Yeah.
The duplex project that was presented to us, did that go in front of the board?
Yeah.
Discovery Park?
That was approved, right?
Yeah,
Approved, I think.
that went in front of the board as well. There wasn't, they kept the 4-bedroom recommendation you guys had. And instead of providing like overflow parking, they came back and found 4 different parking spaces within their Canary Lane.
4 additional?
4 additional ones, yeah. So they went from
12? I mean,
Yeah,
it
they got
went
up to
from
12.
8
Yeah,
to
they
12.
went to 8 to
Good.
12, yeah.
Yeah. It's almost 1 per unit.
Yeah.
Or, well,
Half of one per unit.
Yeah, a little over half per unit, yeah, so.
Oh, maybe there'll all be electric cars that are purchased in the new town.
People
Yeah.
won't be driving cars.
Yeah.
But part of their concern was if they provided parking, you know, in there, they wouldn't be able to know whether or not it was their users or, you know, from Discovery Office Park or if it was from Block 25 or whomever. So rather than, you know, opening the door up to everybody using their office area for parking, they didn't want to do that. So, and I thought that they told me that they couldn't find any more when I asked for it. So it was good that you guys asked for it as well. So. So.
Excellent.
Okay, I think that's all, huh? Anything else? All right, we're adjourned. Thanks, everyone.
Excellent.